When processing the skin, this one was processed by two methods, one using the tissue homogenizer and the other one using the traditional sonication. When we process it by the tissue homogenizer, we place the skin without any processing. We put it directly in the pre-filled tubes with ceramic beads. This time the beads were smaller. They were 1.4 millimeters. And then we add lysis buffer, a traditional or commonly used lysis buffer. And we place it in the tissue homogenizer from Omni at 5 meters per second for 30 seconds. And this time we did 2 cycles. What it means that in 1 minute, we were able to efficiently process all the samples that we were working with. In parallel, we wanted to test the sonicator. For that, we collected the skin, and this time we chopped the skin to create small pieces, and then we put it in the lysis buffer. This in an attempt to help to desegregate the sample after the sonication. Then the lysis buffer that we used was exactly the same that we use with the tissue homogenizer. Later, we do sonication at 60% of amplitude for 30 seconds, and it was necessary to repeat this multiple times. We have to do more than 10 cycles in order to successfully process the sample. And of course, you know that this can represent a risk to warm up the sample, even when we try to keep it on ice all the time. But this was also introducing the risk of losing the integrity of our sample. Another thing that I want to highlight or mention is that processing the samples by sonication take us several minutes to process one sample, and we have to do the processing one by one. So that means that this method was very time consuming. A comparison side by side of the sonicator versus the Bead Ruptor Elite that has been abbreviated here as a BRE. And in the left side of the graphs, we have the PBS control. And in the right side of the graphs, we have the LPS samples. That means, for example, that in yellow, we are going to have always the LPS samples treated by sonication. And in purple, we have the LPS samples treated by the Bead Ruptor Elite. As we already have observed an inflammatory response happening in circulation, we were expecting higher levels of these mediators also in the local tissue. However, when we analyze CXCL3, CCL3, CCL4, and CXCL10 in the LPS samples treated by sonication, we observed just a small amount of cytokines or a tiny increase in the concentration of these chemokines compared to the PBS sonicated sample. It was kind of indicating that we have slightly more, but it's not the type of a strong response that we were expecting during the LPS stimulation. However, when we analyze the samples treated with LPS by process with the homogenizer, here we were able to observe that strong response that we were expecting. Higher levels of CCL3, CCL4, and CXCL10 were detected on those samples. Finally, the anti-inflammatory molecules IL-10 and IL-4, similar to what we observed in circulation, higher levels of IL-10 are observed in the skin, but once again, only in the samples processed with the Bead Ruptor Elite. And for IL-4, the amount of cytokine is very small, less than 1 picogram, as you can observe here in this graph. But again, this is a cytokine that is starting to be produced similar to what we observe in the liver. And we can observe the trend, but this, at least at this time point, this cytokine hasn't been released in higher quantities in the local tissue.